Relations Committee of the Egyptian Parliament in exile, and he will address us in English, so I'll take my seat and listen. Attendance will be in English and translate to myself in Arabic. تفضل.
Thank you. Let me give you a break. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all for coming. Thanks for UC Berkeley for inviting this delegation. That is very important. That is a very important message for people in Egypt, for people in the Arab world, that there are many Americans who are supporting freedom, rule of law, and democracy in the Arab world. It is very important at the very beginning to understand the nature of the struggle in Egypt. The struggle in Egypt is not between Muslims and non-Muslims. It's not between Islam and this or that. It's between democracy and militocracy. Democracy is the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. Militocracy is the rule of the military, by the military, for the military. And that is the nature of the struggle in Egypt. You all know that Egypt is known for its great pyramids. You cannot talk about Egypt without talking about the pyramids. And that's from outside perspective. Inside Egypt, pyramids have two stories. One that is known to almost all of us, it represents the rule of ancient Egyptians who presented a dictatorship and theocracy, brought them together. Political dictatorship and theocracy. For your information, some of these pyramids were built by normal Egyptians, but once they're built, normal Egyptians would not be allowed to go close to the pyramids. I come from Luxor, and I live next to the temple of Karnak. Once you get to the temple of Karnak, you'll find someone telling you, people like you, because I belong to the common Egyptians, were not allowed during the ancient Egyptian days to get into this temple, because once we used to build it, we have to be out only religious, quote-unquote, holy people, and the political leader. And in ancient Egypt, the political leaders were considered to be gods, sons of gods, or mothers of gods. So we had the worst type of dictatorship, political oppression, in addition to a theocracy that justifies anything the political leaders can do. In Egypt, Christianity came. Jesus, peace be upon him, came to Egypt. And the Christian church established itself. The thing that the Christian church did, it adapted itself to the ancient Egyptian culture. So it created a hierarchy similar to that of the ancient religious traditions. After that, Islam came. And there was a problem indeed with Islam. Islam is known to be an egalitarian religion. Islam does not recognize clergy or organized religion. So it presented a real challenge for the Egyptian culture. It believed in it is the right of the people to decide their own course of action, and people need to move forward to establish the rule of law within whatever means they like to do. That journey continued, and I'm not going to go deep into history. I will stop here. I will just take you back to the last 200 years of the Egyptian history. From the time of Muhammad Ali, for you who are specialized in the Egyptian history. Muhammad Ali was not an Egyptian, but he was a ruler who came to rule by the might of power in addition to religious support. And they created the class. That class continued from 1801 until 1952. During that period, the British occupied Egypt from 1882 until 1954. It's important to understand that Muhammad Ali's royal family, in addition to the British colonial power, were ruling over Egypt. They represented the class of what Dr. Gamal called it half percentage. Half percentage of the population control everything in the country. It is similar to the ancient tradition of Egyptians. Only the few have the authority, the few have the wealth, and the few have the vision. They can tell you what you are. They can tell you what you need to think. They can tell you everything. But the unfortunate thing that journey of royal family, in addition to British colonialism, ended with the military. and the new leadership came into power now. What we moved from foreign colonialism to local colonialism. And the military continued, almost running the country the same as the previous colonial power, the royal power, and very similar to that of ancient Egyptians. We lived in this, we suffered a lot as Egyptians. We had no political freedom. That's why in Egypt at that time we developed saying, "Al-hitan li hawdan." Walls have ears. You cannot speak up. If you speak up, and we used to say in Egypt, "الباب اللي يجيلك منه الريح سد واستريح." If the wind comes from that door, the best thing is not to handle the wind, but to close the door. There is no interest of a change. There is no interest of creativity. That's why the political oppression led to economic corruption. And both political oppression, economic corruption, used to put people against each other. You know the colonial policy of divide and conquer. Put Muslims against Christians. They would put different Muslim groups against one another so that they remain in control. On all levels, the country was going down the hill. On all levels, we had thousands of people, when the night comes in Cairo, they would go and spend the night in the graveyard. It was that Egypt. We have about 20% of Egyptians have liver failure. We have no hospitals, no educational system. We have no good transportation. And for you who visited Egypt can testify to what I am saying. Egyptians were fed up with the political oppression, economic corruption, social degradation, religious tension, because that was very important for the political stability of the regime. Egyptians moved to the streets. And they demanded the four things that you heard them: عيش, حرية, عدالة اجتماعية, كرامة إنسانية. Economic prosperity, that's what we wanted to do. Social, freedom, social justice, and the human dignity. This is what we wanted to live as Egyptians. We moved into that process. It was, you know, if you think of the pyramid, when we moved to the streets, we demanded one thing. It was very clear. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. We meant it that the people of Egypt would like to bring this pyramid of corruption down. And we meant the whole pyramid. But what happened is just the head of the pyramid came down, which is Mubarak. But the rest of the pyramid remained. So what we did, we elected a president. This president represented the will of the Egyptian people. But he was on the top of the pyramid. The whole pyramid was rotten to the bottom. So it chopped down, and it moved against the elected president. We had two options. We had a political crisis in April of 2013. And the answer to the political crisis was there were two options. One is more democracy. The second was back to meritocracy. More democracy we needed because we wanted to fix all those economic, political, social, cultural problems. Meritocracy, it looks like an easy answer, an easy way out. But what it does, it keeps the pyramid of corruption intact. It keeps political oppression. It keeps religious oppression. And it is very important if you look at the moment when General Sisi declared the coup. You know whom did he have on his side? The Pope of the Christian Church and the Imam of Al-Azhar. Again, bringing political oppression with religious oppression, bringing them together so that he can control the future of Egypt. There was a great expectation that Egyptians will be fearful of the military and will go home. To the surprise of many, Egyptians decided to resist. And the resistance was a unique resistance because it was peaceful resistance. For almost a year and a half now, Egyptians every day moved to the streets. And look at the result. A president was kidnapped, and all his aides were kidnapped. Thousands of Egyptians got killed in the streets, and not a single officer was questioned for those thousands. But look at what happened after. 40,000+ political prisoners. Many of them are my colleagues. I teach in university. I am a university professor by profession. I became a politician by necessity because I wanted to help my country, Egypt. Imagine 40,000 is not just a number. Imagine when the father is taken into custody for a year and a half as a political prisoner for no other reason other than the possibility of him saying no to the oppressive regime. Those 40,000 are still in jail until today. And then, no freedom of expression. All TV channels were shut down. All newspapers were shut down. No one would dare even, you know, that sign represents the sign of Rab'a. Rab'a means the square in which more than 1,000 got killed in 9 hours. If you put your hand up like this in Egypt, most likely you will be arrested and questioned, and maybe you spend some time in jail. This is the situation in Egypt. Now, what do we do? What do we have to offer as a member of the Egyptian parliament? I have specific things I would like to put them to you so that we can discuss them together. I was elected by the Egyptian people in a city called Luxor. The city of Luxor has 1/3 of it Coptic Christians. I belong to the Freedom and Justice Party, which is the political arm of the Muslim Brotherhood. The majority of the Christians in my city voted for me because I promised them better educational services, better health services, better transportation. I promised them things, no corruption, no bribery. I promised them a better Egypt for all Egyptians. I promised them a better alternative that we've been longing for decades. But what happened is the rest of the pyramid moved against the democratic process and did all these crimes. Now, where do we go? As a person who believes in democracy, as a person who believes in freedom for all Egyptians, and as a person who believes in the rule of law. In Egypt now, there is no democracy. There is no freedom whatsoever. And there is no rule of law. We're going back not to a police state, but to a state worse than a police state, where anyone can be arrested. For example, I was fired from my job without even being questioned. Even I'm threatened of my citizenship to be stripped of me because of speaking up against dictatorship. And I am one out of thousands of people who have no voice, and that's why I am here today, to give a voice to those thousands, if not million, voiceless Egyptians. I think we're left with no option but to remain peaceful and to continue the peaceful resistance to the military regime. We will continue doing this, and I promise you, young Egyptians like you would like to have a better future, would like to have a better educational system, would like to have a better economic life. They are determined to remain until the military rule is back, is away from politics, and politicians can decide the future of the country. So that is the first thing of a strategic vision for the future. At the same time, we would like to have all revolutionary forces, especially those who believe in peacefulness, in peaceful resistance to the military, in spite of all crimes. And I'm telling you, it's very difficult. Imagine that you're a father, have 2 children, and I know many fathers whose 2 children are taken and put into jail for no reason. And even when you want to go and visit your children, you cannot visit them unless you spend hours traveling and hours for waiting. And imagine when you hear that your son or your daughter is being tortured for nothing but for their political views. That is the crime. That is what hurts me as a father. My son was taken into the jail in Egypt and he was tortured. For what? Why? Many of us condemn ISIS, and I do condemn ISIS, and I consider ISIS to be a terrorist group. But I am determined to share with you that ISIS is not the problem. ISIS is a symptom of oppression. ISIS is a symptom of dictatorship. Do you want to know the real problem? try to read ISIS backwardly. What does it produce? Yeah, that makes you laugh. It makes me laugh too. That is the real problem. Because, you know, when oppression, what do people do? When the law, because what is terrorism? Terrorism is to use violence to achieve political ends. What did Sisi do? He used the military power, kidnapped the president, and then he became the president. That is state terrorism, and it should have been condemned by the Europeans, and it should have been condemned by the American administration. And I am here from Berkeley. I say there should have been a strong condemnation and not to accept to deal with a military coup. America, the US administration, dealt with military coups and dictatorships in the Arab world for decades. Enough is enough. Democracy is the only alternative for that part of the world that can produce security, that can produce stability, and we can develop bridges of understanding. We need to understand one another. We need to know more, not more to wars or cultural fights between all of us. We need to develop better understanding. I had a meeting with representatives from the White House and the State Department. And they complained about the anti-American sentiment high in that part of the world, and it is highest in Egypt. And they asked, what is the way out? And the answer for me was very simple. Just don't support dictatorship. Because when people suffer, they know who is supporting this. It is the American administration, and that's why the anti-American sentiment is high. So it is very important to create this better understanding so that we know which direction we're moving. We're having serious dialogue now with political partners from all different especially those who are interested in not having a military dictatorship in Egypt. Number 3, we call for a national dialogue. It is very important for all Egyptians. I don't care if you are an Egyptian who believes in this or that. All what we need to do, let us have a dialogue. Let us put everything on the table. Let us discuss everything. There are no taboos in dialogues. We can discuss and we can agree to disagree, and at the end of the day, it is very important that we go back to the Egyptian people. Because we need not to be more than servants to the Egyptian people. Whatever the Egyptian people want is what needs to go. Number 4, we need international support. What is the type of this support? This international support for our struggle for democracy. We have a long journey to make. We need all the support from the students, from the faculty, from all institutions that believes in democracy and freedom and the rule of law. We've lived for so many decades in that part of the world, hoping we will be able to have a stable country and secured life. With dictatorship, we fail to achieve both security and stability. I am very optimistic that through a democratic process, we will be able to establish both security and stability. With a democracy, we can have a successful dialogue. Let us work together so that we bring democracy back to Egypt, and at the same time, we have a dialogue that we can build the bridges of mutual understanding and mutual respect. Thank you.
So we'll take questions at this point. So